Welcome back to the Fantasy Boss Football Show. I'm Ronald. That's Ryan. Episode 3. Two guys, one cup. Wait, oops. Sorry. Two guys, real rosters on the record.
Uh,
Yeah. I was telling Ryan before the show that I got a terrible joke to make, so hopefully y'all don't get that, right? Because that was a really shitty joke. Damn
well,
it.
I hope you have not seen that, please.
Yeah, you know.
Oh,
Where do
that's
we
so
go from here,
funny,
man? Is it all uphill or downhill? I don't know.
man. I feel like that's a good way to kick it off. I'm a bit crazy though, so I keep my mind in the gutter. But hey, I like where you're at though, man. It's a
Hey,
good
man.
way to set the tone.
Yeah,
out
let's
here.
go. Well, got to spice it up. This is the last quiet week we get, right? Rookies are in, veterans reporting a week, and the second pads come on. Every take for the last couple weeks gets graded by actual football. We got some big news too. One of our followers from last week finally got his number. That's, I guess, partially good news. In other news, that number is ugly. So,
Right.
you do what you can, right?
Yep.
Ryan, where do you want to start at, man?
Man, I think we can kick it off. We got a couple different names we've got to hit here. I'm thinking we could kind of just go with, cover a little bit of Tyreek news, guys maybe that are unsigned and that could have an impact, down the line.
Yeah. So we're going to talk through a few names, and the framing that we'll keep in mind is that camps open in a week, so the news that lands now is going to stick. And so as we're talking through these players, we're going to want to get your opinion on, does any of this change when you actually click on draft day? So let's talk about Rice. We talked about him before. How you feeling about him? There's a little bit of uncertainty there, but does that uncertainty, is that a buy signal for you?
Yeah, I think the uncertainty at this point, I feel comfortable with it, and it almost intrigues me a little bit. I'm a little bit of, I like to absorb some risk sometimes, in the name of upside. So he's one of those guys where that he's an alpha. He's one of the guys that you can get, in that second round. If he slips to the third or whatever, you get a guy who's an alpha target hog type of wide receiver. It's so hard to find them outside of the first round. So clearly you do have to pay in the name of risk, and then but that upside is glorious. I think in all the metrics on a per game basis, when he's right, he's up there putting up like top 5 to 8 numbers. So yeah, I've got him actually as my wide receiver 8 in redraft this year, as you can see on the draft kit. But yeah, I love me some Rice. I think I got him about at least 8 or 9 spots up on consensus. So I'm good with it, man.
Yeah, speaking of draft kit, if you don't have one available, Fantasy Boss give them away for free. Ryan did a great job making it. Go to fantasyboss.com/draft/kit there. And yeah, like the take on Rice, definitely some, as the market adjusts, there's profit to be had. So, just weigh that in, what you're going to pay for him. Don't pay top dollar, but if he falls, then you're getting a lot of value there, a lot of upside, declining cost.
Yep, 100%. You want to wait? Let those guys take Nico Collins. Let those guys, take some of those guys that have a heavier price tag. Turn around, wait a little bit, add a little bit of risk. But, man, great situation. If Mahomes comes out and plays week 1, they really don't have anyone else that threatens his role. He's got a secure alpha role. So, yeah, fire him up, man. And if he's on good behavior, he's probably one of the top couple league winners at that position in
Well,
general.
speaking of competition, leads to our next person to talk about, one Tyreek Hill, still unsigned. It seems crazy that dude's a freak athlete. He's only 32, which is, I guess, is not that old, but been in the league for a bit, had some health concerns. There's been some talk of a KC reunion. Any interest in Tyreek at all, no matter the price of the landing location?
It's tough to kind of wrap your head around because that was a really significant injury, and he's already kind of getting close to a point where there's a big cliff in terms of that age drop, where it's like 32, 33, 34. Thielen, some of these guys that have done really well over the years that just kind of get to that point where they're not quite who they were and they're banged up all the time. So I think the part that made Tyreek Hill so special over the course of his career is just the threat of being able to score, whether it's a screen or whether it's vertical, from anywhere on the field. Whatever kind of route, he's just that guy that you have to give the most attention to. So if he loses a step or a step and a half or whatever, and he doesn't have that game-breaking threat, I think he loses a lot of his appeal. And then, also factoring sort of some of the off-the-field baggage that he's carried, certain places and those things. So I'm sure that's a factor. So, I'm kind of expecting that teams will want him to first and foremost gain that medical clearance because I think his agent and maybe Tyreek himself, I'm not sure, but has kind of talked about still building up and not being,
Yeah.
fully ready to go. So I think when you factor, hey, he's got some of the off the field things that he's dealt with, where in the past you kind of look past those things. Now he's dealing with the fact that he's getting close to that number where there's like an age drop off. So for production just on that, and he had the full knee blowout. So yeah, just a lot of risk with Tyreek, and I think teams are probably monitoring that. And I think that if you're a competitive team, then you probably got your eyes on him. And if you're not a competitive team, I think you probably don't have any interest in getting him on your team right now.
All right, let's change gears to some backfield quick hits. Kamara restructured. He's staying in New Orleans. How you feel about that? Is that good for the RB room now? Is that better for Shuck? I mean, it's definitely worse for Kamara, but how's that affect ETN and the rest?
Yeah, I think that's a good jolt of something to that offense there. I think AK brings a lot of juice. I mean, maybe not as much as he used to, but certainly gives Shuck a boost because that Kamara is capable of being an elite pass catching running back. So you get him in on third downs, you get him in on a 2-minute drill, you get him in those situations where you really need a savvy guy running routes, catching balls, getting out of bounds, and doing those things. I think Kamara really is good to stay there for real life. But in terms of fantasy, I think he's going to end up taking away, from Etienne and, probably not really having value on his own. I've got, a couple shares of AK, and I think I got him just as a bench plug-and-play guy ready for maybe a bye week or so or an injury. Or if an injury happens to Etienne himself, man, you wait and, watch AK come in, and I'm sure he's not exactly who he used to be, but, he might have some magic left in there, so everybody remembers that like Christmas time game with 5 TDs. So I'll never count out AK, man. He's a fantasy superstar for the last 7, 8, 9 years now. So
Yeah, and you'll hear say it's a bunch. Everything's about value. While we're not expecting him to produce first round value or points by come season's end, it does not mean he has no value. I mean, you're going to get him for a late round dart throw, maybe even off waivers in some leagues, right? So those of y'all in PPR, half PPR leagues, that extra 10, 12 points makes all the difference in some matchups. He doesn't need to be scoring 25 points a week to be valuable. So especially in negative game scripts where you're thinking they're going to have to pass the ball a lot, 5, 6 catches, a couple of 30, 40 yards, a touchdown every second, third game or something. That stuff adds up. So, yeah,
100%.
Keep him on your list.
Yeah, even in Dynasty too, man. You want to, you're a competitive team, and he's probably a good bench guy, good depth guy. You want to throw like a 28th third, and in a non-superflex league. AK is a good guy to get because he's so cheap, and that he's going to have at least more than a few good weeks.
Josh Jacobs facing some discipline. How you feeling? You moving his price up, down? You buying more or less, or nothing changing for you?
It's funny because before that news came out, I actually had been selling Jacobs, anywhere I could, and basically recommending that everybody kind of looks to sell Jacobs in Dynasty because he was already kind of getting to that point where he had so many nagging injuries that were creeping up with his bottom half. He always seemed like he was gimpy and limping around and, sort of losing that efficiency that he had for a while there early in his career with the Raiders and those things where he was just, having big games all the time. And while his touchdown numbers were still pretty good, and they've been good for the most part in his career, some of those efficiency metrics and those things really are telling of, sort of a decline in his physical ability first. And then secondly, you add that risk where, allegedly, whatever went down there, some serious stuff. So, yeah, I it's somebody that I'm probably avoiding unless his ADP, drops like a rock right now. I'm not interested in taking him anywhere, in that first half of the third round or wherever he's going right now, or fourth round or whatever. So yeah, I'm sort of out on him. It's got more to do with sort of both things. I guess the on the field and the off the field when you combine it sort of drops him for me. But yeah, I definitely worry about him quite a bit there. So. But it's tough because, in a perfect world, they want him to go in and still be that workhorse that he can be because they really don't have a whole lot behind him. So,
Yeah, that's tough. I mean, like you said, for that draft capital you're paying, that's a lot of risk to incur. And I'd almost rather take somebody with a little bit less upside and maybe a little bit lower floor just for not having to deal with it and worry about it because Man, nothing irks me more than like missing on a top, my first 5 rounds worth of picks. You got to hit on those, right? Those should be the mostly easy ones. There's so much talent, maybe not high end talent, but enough well known talent that we should be doing good. So keep that in mind. All right, that's Josh Jacobs. Jordan Mason's up. Chuba Hubbard is down. How you feel about each of those guys?
I kind of have been feeling like Mason was a pretty good value. I know they brought Jones back, but he's been kind of a shell of himself. He's a guy that's sort of undersized, that's had a beautiful career, and honestly came out of, I think it was UTEP. Yeah, it was UTEP, and just had a hell of a good career. But man, those nagging injuries. Speaking of, Jacobs with his. Jones has the same kind of situation going on, and he's not getting any younger. So I think he's at that point where he's a complementary back. I don't think Jones is going to be pacing any backfield at this stage of his career. Yeah. So I think that leaves the door open for Mason to, at the very least, probably get the majority of the early down work in the regular season, or at least split it with Jones, while Jones is healthy. And I would think that even if Jones is healthy, I think Mason's the guy in the goal line anyway. So, yeah, I think he's a good value, if I'm being honest.
Isn't that crazy? Jones, Kamara, they're basically the same phase of their careers. Like, it wasn't that long ago they were, top second, third round running backs. Man, they were
tough, man. Running backs tough, and they just fall off that cliff so fast sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, real fast, dude. It's like, man, there are backups that we're talking about not even drafting, and it was a couple of 3 years ago. They would cost you top draft capital. I mean,
yeah, that's why it's important to know, when to sell in dynasty and those things, because if you can move them for big value before they hit that cliff, that's how you keep your dynasty going, man. So it's one of those things where it does happen fast, and you have to be able to read it. So that's the thing. Okay, efficiency metrics, you see that. Okay, nagging injuries where they're always limping, you see that. Okay, so it's time to move those guys when they're 28, 29, and they look like they're starting to struggle a little bit.
Do you want to have a sing along?
I would love a good sing along. I've been waiting all day.
Yeah, some country music. You gotta know when to hold 'em, know when to fold 'em, know when to walk away. You think people are going to turn off the podcast after that? Yeah, that applies in fantasy too.
Little Kenny.
Yeah. Let's talk about some QBs. Man, the Browns. Got to talk about all of it, but I am not excited about most of the Browns. A few key players, but I'm just less excited about their QB room. Watson, Shador, I don't know. I mean, it matters to some degree for fantasy, but what are you feeling on who's going to win and how that's going to impact, fantasy players?
It is a tough call. I'm going to go with my gut on this one, though. I wasn't big on Shador coming out of Colorado. I like his mental makeup. I think he's tough enough. I think he's a gamer and all that. I think that he lacks an NFL caliber arm. I think a lot of times you see the ball kind of come out and flutter, and he's accurate. He's got a touch down the field, but
Tom Brady would disagree. You don't need a strong arm for this league.
True, but you need at least an average arm. Like Brady had an above average arm. He wasn't like he could rip some BBs every now and again. So Shador has good touch, and I think that he's got really good qualities about him. But I don't love his release. I don't love the way the ball comes out. But anyways, so to get back to what I was saying, Watson, when I was watching him the other day, man, just even in those mini camps and those things, the ball jumps out of his hand. He kind of looks like he's starting to find his groove again. And if you get any semblance of Watson from the Clemson days and the Houston days and the Watson of old, before everything went down, people forget that just his tools were up there. They were discussing him as being like a top 2 or the best quarterback in the league at that time. So, I don't think the skill vanishes. Obviously, he had quite a bit that was, in his way off the field and those things, but hey, if Todd Monken wants to give him a real chance to win this job, I mean, God knows they're paying him starter money, like they're paying him a full bag. So if he comes out and has a good camp, I think that he's probably the one that gets a nod. And not only that, I think he's the one that gives everybody on this offense a chance to have fantasy success. I think that he can kind of, you think about the Will Fullers and the Hopkins and all the guys that he's been able to kind of feed over the years, Akins or whatever, like just all the guys that he's been able to feed in Houston. And I think that he could still maybe have a little bit of ball left in the tank, whether it's just this year or whatever. But so I'd look out for, first of all, obviously that opens everything up for Judkins. But I think that Boston and him could get a good relationship going because he likes to push the ball down the field, and Boston is really good getting vertical and catching the ball over guys. And Casey Concepcion is, the guy that just separates really easy and smooth. And then Fannin, that ultra productive, record-setting tight end when he was at Bowling Green. He had literally the tight end record for all-time, yards and had like 110 catches. So he's a stud too, man. 70 some odd catches last year. So I think this offense is a lot better than people think it is, if that quarterback is right, which is obviously a big if. But man, they got pieces. That line is so much better. Monken is a good play caller. I think that they're just missing that quarterback. And if Watson finds that groove, man, they might be a little bit better than people thought they'd be.
And it's one of those weird situations where I think he's going to bring some excitement to the team. Is he their long-term answer? Who knows? The numbers say probably not because this league is hard. Nothing against him personally. Mm-hmm. But, I always wonder with teams, at what point do they decide I won't say intentionally want to lose, but we're not necessarily putting out the best product because we want some draft picks and to rebuild for the future. So I wonder if they're going to, go one way versus the other because they know that no matter who's at QB, they're not going to win this year most likely. So are they playing for future picks? So, we'll see how it shakes out.
Yep. If I had to guess, I would say they maybe roll with Watson early, and if they lose a couple games, they maybe want to see what Shedur's got before they have this big upcoming, 27 class with all these picks and things that they've got. So I'm sure at some point they'll want to see Sanders out there for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's talk some fun stuff. Your boy, Mr. Shuck, two big things happened. The Saints committed, made it official. He's their 2026 starter. He's got some weapons around him. AK's coming back. Camp opens on the 29th, but the market's still fading him around 122, another July faller. Situation got better, price got cheaper, but how you feel about that? Doesn't seem to make sense.
Doesn't really make a lot of sense other than the fact that all I can think of for him falling is it's kind of jumbled up in that area, in that range where he's in, where you got guys like, there's like Love and Baker and Darnold and all these other guys that might be also going up at the same time. So I don't think, if he's falling, first of all, I'm surprised that he's falling. Second of all, if he's falling, I don't think it has anything to do with his situation because his situation's only getting better.
Yeah.
When you think about the fact that, and I try to stay up on this every day, I've seen him, on his Instagram or whatever, just posting clips, going out and training with all the guys. Like, he's super serious. He's dealing. Obviously, it's like in shorts right now, but, he's getting after it. So I love his situation there. I think he's got one of the better receiving corps in the league. If Tyson stays healthy, you got Juwan Johnson, who's a fairly decent tight end. They go out, they draft Delp. Yeah, they retain Kamara. They go out, they pay ETN a bunch of money. They have a phenomenal offensive line. They have Banks. They have all these guys. So they've got arguably a top 5 offensive line in the entire league. Okay, yeah, Kellen Moore, one of the very best play callers in the league, and he's such a good fit with Shuck because, he loves to just get that big old pocket passer that can sit back and just sling it from the pocket. So I think that it's just a match made in heaven. And like you were saying, I think that he's an absolute steal. I think, top 12 upside, more than top 12. You could say top 10 upside. Where does he finish realistically? I think somewhere between probably 14 and 16. But at the range where he's going right now, that's still really good. You're talking about pushing for a back end QB1 numbers where when you're going somewhere around the 20s. So
for sure, and if you don't get a top 5 QB, top 7 QB, I mean the difference between QB 8 to 10 and 15 to 20 isn't that much week to week. And, you catch the right one, they tend to pop off. And it's like, yeah, you ride them, while you can, and then fill in the gaps along the way.
Yeah, Superflex leagues especially, man. I think that he is going to prove to be an unbelievable value if you wait to take your QB2. So, like we were talking about recently, okay, cool, you want to stack that nice, beautiful QB1. You've got a Herbie, you've got somebody Burrow, somebody that you can really trust, and then you want to just wait. Fill out your lineup, really get a nice lineup, plug your QB2 as Shuck, and he's going to come up and finish over his ADP. So you're talking about just solid value and upside that people really don't realize, to be honest.
Yeah. Get him late. All right, let's move on to Neighbors. We talked about him last week before. He's confirmed on the PUP. Team says he's on schedule, but no guarantees. We're probably looking realistically at the best case, week 3 or 4 for his return. How's that feel? How's that make you feel on his price? We like the talent, but man, health is wealth, right? And just in the first month of the season, that's not a great way to start, especially considering most players coming back don't hit the ground with their full workload in the first game, or even two sometimes. So how are you moving on, Neighbors?
Um, I'm not sure if it's official yet, but I know they're probably leaning towards it. They keep on having this back and forth, whether it's pup or not. But yeah, it more than likely it looks like it will be because I know he's had that second cleanup. But yeah, I still like him, with where he's going right now, just because when he comes back, he's got the potential to be a league winner. But kind of like I was saying recently too, just, man, if you can set your lineup and get good receivers in front of him so that you could have the ability to plug him on IR and then have him come back in the second half, while you're treading some water without him, he's that league winner because I think talent-wise, he's up there in the top 5 in the whole entire league. Situation isn't great. Obviously he should be recovered by now, but he's had those cleanups where he's had, I believe, 2. And every time you add a cleanup, I believe it tacks about a month onto your recovery table. So, he's going to be pushing it to get there in the first month. I would guess he probably does miss the first 4-ish so that they have that roster spot if they do move him to the PUP. But even after that, it probably is going to be another 3 or 4 week ramp up period where he probably will be pretty good, maybe like back end wide receiver 2 numbers. Maybe he's only playing 75-80% of the snaps, if that. But then that back end, that stretch, man, if you can really get that push for the playoffs, he's going to help you get there and win you championships. So it depends on Neighbors where you can get him because it's still like really murky waters trying to see through exactly how this is going to play out. But yeah, I do love Neighbors, man. I love him as a player. I think he's so good and slept on, but it's going to depend on if he falls to a place where I'm comfortable taking him. And if he does miss time, go get yourself some Isaiah Likely.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all about that price, man. The talent's there, but, 4th-round draft capital, a lot of good people still in that range.
No doubt.
We'll talk about some of them now. All right, so 2 of your favorites, Judkins, Montgomery. The market's splitting them. Montgomery is getting the bell cow write-ups. That's trending some love for him. While Judkins is getting a lot of the words boom and trap associated with his name now. So I know what you're going to say, but, who...
Quinshon Judkins, baby! Put it on the board! Yes! Let's go. I'm all in on Quinshon Judkins, man. I've watched him every day. I'm almost borderline probably creep mode on his Instagram right now. I'm like, oh, these training videos got me so happy. I watched one today. It was like documentary-ish. He was just out there just cutting and working with a coach. I did see Monty training recently too, so I love both guys. But I'm going to go ahead and give everybody that Judkins is my favorite value at ADP of any running back in fantasy football right now. If you can get him in the very late 5th, early 6th round, as an RB2, RB3, he's a league winner, man. I mean, the kind of volume that he's going to command there, when you think about Munkin, when you think about the scheme, when you think about... Like, if you look at the tape from Judkins when he was at Ole Miss, when he was at Ohio State, like, he doesn't miss, man. His talent is undeniable. He is much more talented than a guy like Montgomery, and I hate to say it because I love little flea market Montgomery over there in Houston, but, yeah, man, I absolutely love Judkins. So he's my guy I'm going to hang my hat on. But I love both, man. If you can find a way to wait and get both of those guys, I think they're both arguably top 5 values at the position. So I'm going Judkins. He's my guy. I'm going to hang my hat on him and plant that man right this second. So, but Monty's not far behind, but I'm going QJ, baby.
I mean, you just stop talking about QJ so his price doesn't keep increasing, please.
I can't stop, won't stop, man.
All right, let's move on to one Drake May. Let me pull his little picture up here. Have you seen that? Okay, there he is.
Love the Drake.
So, Drake May, still rising. He's around, the experts have him around the end of the 5th round or so. But, draft consensus, he's almost 4th round, early 4th, late 3rd round draft capital. Keeps getting higher. So how you feeling about old Drake May at that price?
Well, man, it's tough. I was actually in a mock draft last night with a bunch of my buddies that run pages and other analysts and all these things. And I was actually really curious to see where he went. He went, I believe it was like 6.3 or 6.2. He lasted until the sixth round. So I think it has less to do with the fact that he's, due to take a slight regression, even though he probably is. More to do with the fact that in one QB leagues, you're just better off waiting for quarterbacks. So say you're going to go and take Drake May late in round 3 over those other guys. I couldn't live with the fact that I'm passing on all of those guys to draft my quarterback there. I'm going to wait. So personally, that's why I have him low in my rankings. It's not necessarily because I don't think he's good. I think that he's great, and I love Brown. But I think his schedule is a little more difficult this year. He kind of had just a cakewalk, schedule last year. So, but I don't know, man. I'm on board with him, but not at his ADP. I'm definitely fading at ADP. I will not be having any shares of him, late third round or so.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fair. And like we talked about with Shuck, there's just so much value that it's not that Drake May isn't a phenomenal talent and he's not going to crush it. Is at the price you got to pay. You have some choices you got to make. Some of them are harder than others, and at that cost, I'd rather wait too.
Yep, 100%, man. Yeah, you're pretty much, in my opinion, that's the kind of thing you're going to do, and you're going to kick yourself. You're going to see somebody else that went after him, and you're just going to kick yourself. You're missing out on plenty of good players and reaching for that quarterback. So I'm out on him, but I do like him as a player, though, especially in Dynasty.
Camp's a week out. There's a lot of value in the jobs that are still open, right? So let's talk about a few of those unsettled jobs. How you feeling about Rachaad White? How you feeling about old Greg Dulcich over there with Waller gone?
Yep. So I've been saying to everybody too, man, this Washington backfield is probably going to be one of the murkiest situations and one of the hardest to figure out because it could be more than a two-man show. They could very easily just utilize 3 running backs every single week. So it's going to be really hard, man. You're going to have to pick one and kind of live with it. So for me, it's not going to be Rachaad White because his value is the one that's going up right now. Like we were kind of talking about how you're like, oh, with Rashee Rice or whatever, what are you going to do? Is he's kind of fallen. People are a little bit bitter and cooling on him. I'm buying him. Okay, so hey, Rachaad White, man, he's jacked up, man. Everybody's loving him right now. Guess what? I'm not on that. So PPR leagues, he might be okay because I only really see him as a third down back. At this point in his career, even whether it was at Arizona State or whether it was with Tampa Bay, his rushing metrics on a per play basis are poor, are really not very good. His yards per carry, and then just his ability to kind of play between the tackles is not there. But where he excels is, he is an elite pass-catching running back. He runs really good routes, sound hands, super reliable, 2-minute drill, and otherwise. But I'm going to go ahead and say I think that Bill and Katron Allen probably split the majority of the early down work. And I would guess maybe, shortly into the season, they're going to find a way to let Katron Allen probably get some goal line work. So, if you're going to gamble on anybody, I would probably gamble on Bill because his ADP is pretty good and he is super explosive. So he might not need as many touches where Rachaad White is not explosive, never really has been in the run game. So I would probably rather gamble on Bill, but I'm not looking at that backfield, particularly, in redraft leagues, unless somebody falls where I'm really comfortable or I can steal Katron Allen in the last round, in case somebody gets hurt and then he kind of is capable of having a big workload like he did at Penn State last year over Singleton even.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah, a riser's only value if the price is still behind the roll. And I was about to throw QJ in here, and there's probably some value to be had with him, but we're going to put him aside because he's too easy of a choice. But are you taking, White at around pick 100? Or are you taking Greg for free? Which one click actually puts you in a better position to win a league?
I'm going to go with probably an unpopular opinion, but I'm going to go with Greg Dulcich. I really liked him coming out of UCLA. He played with Dorian Thomas-Robinson or whatever, DTR there. They were balling back in UCLA days. And he's had some really rough injury luck. With Denver, I really kind of liked him coming out. They took him, I think he had third-round draft capital, so really good capital. And he's not like an inline blocking kind of guy. He's the guy that you split out, and then create mismatches with. And he's really, really smooth running routes, catching balls, doing all those kind of things. So, I'm going to take Dulcich, man. They have absolutely no wide receivers. They have, Tolbert. They have Chris Bell, who I believe is not practicing or probably not close to practicing at this point. So they really have nobody to compete with. in terms of just like pass catchers there. So I think Willis kind of locks on to Dulcich, and I think that if he can stay healthy, he there's a realistic possibility he leads that team in some of the receiving categories. So
Yeah.
but he's for free right now, man. I'm
Yeah.
if he's my tight end too, and I wait till the very end, I'm so happy to get him, as a depth piece.
Mm-hmm. He didn't have to do much for to return some profit there.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's literally free. So if he goes out, and his ADP is creeping up, man. I kind of was on him for a while. I know I was posting recently or a while back, like, this guy, nobody's even looking at him, and they didn't end up really like doing much to address it in the draft. So he's really kind of been flying under the radar as a big winner of the offseason. They brought him back in, and obviously, gave him another year to prove himself. So yeah, if he can stay healthy, man, he's a really good receiving tight end. People probably sleep on him because he's burned so many guys with these injuries over the years in fantasy leagues, but. I'm going to go ahead and be comfortable taking him. Much more likely I get him than a guy like Rashad White. I'm not looking to get him around pick 100 in my opinion. I'd rather wait and take Dulcich.
That's fair. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, like the last 4 or 5 hour roster spots are so interchangeable. It's like, some folks just better to just wait and save that for the waivers and, see if you hit on one of those versus taking your waiver pick in round 10 or 11 when you don't have to take it just yet. Man, this is time's flying, a couple weeks away. So what's your big take before your boldest lock-in, your boldest call before camps officially start off and this thing gets crazy?
Hey, man, if we're keeping tabs on all this stuff, I'm going to keep hanging my hat on Emeka Egbuka being the biggest riser in camp. I think that he's going to be a guy where, they see that Godwin is sort of showing that wear and tear and that age. And then, you got McMillan, who's a good field stretcher on the outside. But all signs point to Egbuka just being an absolute force in a target hog. Obviously, they've been talking him up. So that's the one guy. Probably my young guns I've been on, man, from the very beginning, Burden and Egbuka. I want to see them in camp. They're the two guys I'm going to be watching the closest. And I also think that Egbuka is the one that probably is one of the biggest ADP risers with where he's going right now. I believe like late 4th round or so. I'm not going to be shocked if he can move up maybe like 10 spots or so by the time we're drafting here in late August.
Mm-hmm. All right, I'm saying it out loud. This is it. This is the year. Cowboys winning it all. Dak Prescott, monster year. CeeDee Lamb, monster year. George Pickens, monster year. Right? I feel like, maybe a couple of 5 years ago, there was only 2 or 3 teams making it deep into the playoff. It didn't matter the rest of the league. You always knew KC was going to be there, a couple other teams. But these past 3-4 years, it's so wide open. It's like, man, anything could happen. Sure, the NFC East is one of the stronger divisions, but, we expected the Eagles to go on some dynasty run, and they've been good the past few years, but not like we've thought, right? Baltimore has been up and down, the Bills, so many teams. It's like, Cowboys have so many good pieces. As a lifelong Cowboys fan, you just figure that one of these years they're going to put it together. Hey, this is going to be the year.
You know what, man? That's not a bold take. I actually have them winning that division too, man. That's not a bold take at all. I think they definitely win that division. I like it, man. I think that they can blow up this year because, obviously, like the offense that you mentioned, I think that they're going to be absolutely humming. They were cruising last year, and if they had Lamb healthy, they probably would have been much better. Javonte gives them a good ground threat, but then you turn around and you look at defense, and they've actually been making some really good moves. Jerry's doing his thing lately. So Quinnen Williams they got. He's a really good piece up front. They were able to get down. So, they've got Overshown. They've got these guys that are really good players that I think are really going to help them, man. So I'm with you. I think the Cowboys have a much better year. Everybody kind of likes to bust their chops and make fun of them and Jerry and Dak and those guys, but I think Dak maybe silences some critics this year. Maybe gets him in the playoffs and wins a game or so. Maybe a game or two, man. I hope that he can. I really hope he can because he's a good guy. He's one of those guys I followed even when he was at Mississippi State. Like, he never got the credit that he deserved. He always put up numbers, and then they drafted him late or whatever. He always kind of disrespected. Turns out to be a phenomenal pro. He's been doing it for so long. So kudos to him, man. And I hope that they can do it because I love that offense, especially for fantasy, man. You got any shares of GP? You got CeeDee Lamb, Ferguson. Is great value. Yeah. Javonte is great value. Dak is great value. So yeah, go get some Cowboys, man, for fantasy and real life, man. I'm with you, dude.
Yeah. I'm excited, and I don't mean just winning the division. I mean winning it all. They're going to the Super Bowl. They're going to smash 17-1, baby. Let's do this.
Woo-hoo-hoo!
Right?
Crank it up, baby. I like it. I like
and
it.
that
Let's be
one
bold
is,
on here now.
and that one is just because they're going to rest guys down the stretch after they lock up.
Let's
You know,
go.
they're buying everything. So,
I
yeah, I'm
like it.
excited.
Let's go, dude. I like it. I like them this year, brother. I hope they do it for you. I really do. I believe in them, man.
You know, the more I play fantasy, the less we root for all the teams. We root for players, basically. And, it's like, man, the more I play, I want as many pieces of explosive offenses as I can get.
Yep.
You know,
Detroit, Dallas. Yeah, of course.
right. Because, I mean, especially nowadays, there's not that many. There's a lot of good teams, don't get me wrong. But there's not a whole lot of the Detroits, Dallas, even Chicago's coming up where they're just putting up bunches of points, reliably, feeding a bunch of mouths. And it's like, yeah, let me go make sure I get a share.
Yep. Especially those running backs because they're so slept on with Javonte and those guys are steel.
You just read my mind. I was about to say Javonte or QJ.
I have them close, but I'm going to take Judkins just because I think he's a much better player. He's just a much better player to me in real life, and Javonte still. He looked really good last year, but, it's hard to forget about the fact that he had some serious injuries before that. But I still believe in Javonte. I'm just a Judkins truther, so I'm rolling with him. Most people will probably side with Javonte there, and he's a rock-solid RB2, man. If you can get him, in that RB like 13, 14, 15 range, I think that he's great. I just personally have Judkins right around like 11, 12. So I might have Judkins like one spot higher than him or two.
Yeah, I hear you. It's it's one of those things we struggle with as fantasy players, shooting for the upside or shooting for the safety. Sometimes you can't have it both ways, but maybe with Judkins you can.
Right. Yeah, his floor is good too because that volume will be there, man. I see him working, man. He is ripped. He's just a physical freak, like specimen. That quickness is the part that people don't, that people sleep on. He's got that like 98th percentile burst, short area quickness for a dude who's 6 feet 220. So he's making you miss in the hole, and he's going to run somebody over on the second level. Sign me up for this guy, man. I don't care. I trust him with Monken. But yeah, I really like Javonte. I'm high on him too. I think I've got him about 4 or 5 spots over ADP, or consensus. So yeah, I'm with you, man. I think Javonte and those guys have a hell of a good year. I think Dallas is just carving people up, and I think Washington, if JD gets hurt again, might be down there. Their defense is rough. The Giants, without Neighbors, they might be in rough shape. So I think it might come down to Philly and Dallas for sure.
I'm about to look up Dallas' schedule. I want to see when they play Philly. 1 second here.
I know they played week 1 last year, I remember.
Yeah, that's going to dictate how the rest of their season goes. Let me pull this up here.
They almost had that first week. They had them, man. They had that in the bag, and then I think they blew it late. That was like the Jalen Carter game there where that incident happened.
They play them in week 4. So we're going to know at the end of week 4 what kind of year it's going to be for the Cowboys.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, that's going to be a statement game for them. I think they might be hopped up for that one. And if they're coming in healthy and rolling, I think is that in Dallas or Philly week 4?
In Philly, let's go.
Woo-hoo!
Yeah,
gonna have to get up and definitely be prepared for some noise on that one.
They open the season at the Giants, then home against the Ravens, home against the Bucks, then at Philly. Which, I mean, it's not a murderer's row of games, but it's not a cakewalk either.
Yeah, that Tampa Bay game is going to be a very fantasy-friendly game for both teams. You got to imagine you want a part of that game, whether it's Ibuka or Lamb or Pickens or Bucky or any of those guys, man. Baker and Dak, they're going to be just absolutely firing the rock, like back when Baker was battling Mahomes back at the old Texas Tech and Oklahoma days there. So it's going to be a whole shootout there. But yeah, man. Let's go. Let's go Cowboys. I think that Dak has another top 10 finish in him for fantasy this year again.
No, I think so too. I think I read that wrong though. They're actually playing them 1, 2, 3, 4, week 7. Sorry.
Cool. Well, hey, they'll get a chance to establish even more. They might go in with some good momentum. So hopefully they can get it kicked off good this season. I know it was kind of a gross ending to that first game last year. But yeah, I believe in them, man. I love that offense.
Yeah, their schedule, there's a lot of, I don't want to say, we'll say middle tier teams in the NFL.
Yep.
So
there is. I think Washington's probably one of them too.
Any given Sunday, anything can happen, but I look at this schedule, it's like, man, a couple things break the Cowboys' way. And that 17-1 isn't so
Yeah.
unrealistic, right?
It's nice getting the Niners in November because at that point you got to imagine they're probably like looking like Space Jam when the guys were on the bench and the casts and all that like rolling around there. So the Niners are beat up late in the year probably. So yeah, let's go. I'm with you, dude. I hope they can do big things. So I believe that they can because they addressed that defense where there was so many holes last year. But hey, Jerry's doing some things, man. He knows what he's doing right now.
Yeah, we'll see. We shall see. Fingers crossed. Anything you want to leave the folks with?
Man, it's been real as always. I am so happy and looking forward to training camp. Even if it's just the young guys coming up this week, I'm going to be available if ever you want to reach out. But yeah, let's stay locked in and get ready for the vets to come in and just rock this thing. We got drafts coming up, man. So definitely make sure to hop on the Fantasy Boss and get on those draft kits. They are free right now, for the first however many people. So get in there, and make sure you get that thing because it's going to be helpful. It's going to be helpful for you having success this year.
Any edge counts. Yeah, so hop in there. Thanks for
Yep.
listening. We're looking forward to working with y'all and making all this shit fun. Let's go. Catch y'all soon.
Peace.